So we just did JavaScript. We know a little bit of JavaScript now. We can make variables and manipulate stuff here and there. But how do we use it inside of the browser? Because that's really what we're here to do, right? We want to have JavaScript inside of a web page. But in order for us to do that, we need to learn about something called the DOM first. Has anyone heard of the DOM before?
Yeah, I saw it when I inspect elements on the Google page. And
So
I'm
it's
like,
somewhere.
I have no idea what that is.
So between B and Will, you've heard of the DOMs. And DOMs. What is the DOM? What's a good working definition of the DOM?
The entire project.
The entire project?
Yes.
Will, do you want to add to that?
It is the objects that you use to call different JavaScript objects in HTML.
So the JavaScript object, HTML objects, kind of the bridge there.
Yeah.
Okay, it's a good working definition. So document object model is, at its core, it's how JavaScript sees HTML.
Yeah.
It's what we're looking up, and it's pretty much a node-based representation of the HTML page. Right? A little bit for browse there, a little bit.
Say that again. Node-based.
A node-based it's a node-based representation of the HTML page. So you know how we have the HTML page? We have a whole bunch of parents and children relationship.
Mm-hmm.
Those are actually represented as like a direct graph of nodes. This is getting pretty mathy, right?
I like it.
I know, I love it, and I can talk about it all day, but really, what we need to know about it is the DOM is just the HTML. It's a fancy way of saying HTML. It has some extra power, some extra things, some extra abilities there, but it's pretty much, you can think of the DOM and HTML interchangeably.
So they're kind of like, it's just written in a different language now.
Nope, it's just like a rename of it.
Okay.
I'm confused. Does DOM have a different definition if you're in Node or if you're just in vanilla JavaScript?
So Node doesn't have a DOM
Okay.
because the DOM is HTML.
Okay.
Where we were this morning, we were just in JavaScript, and that's it.
Right.
But now we're going, we're going to put JavaScript inside of a browser.
Okay.
So before, 10 minutes ago, we didn't have a DOM. Now we have a DOM.
Gotcha.
So because we're thinking about it interchangeably with the HTML,
Mhm.
if we needed a DOM to have JavaScript work on, we could just go pull the HTML from like our hobbies page.
Yep, we can add a script tag to that.
Right.
And if we wanted to interact with that HTML, we're now interacting with the DOM.
Alright, thank you.
No, I think that answers my question.
All right.
So like what you just said, that's kind of like putting like a HTML inside of HTML.
No, it is the HTML.
Okay.
It's the same thing.
That's how it works. It's just
Is this a cup or a water bottle?
Water bottle.
Exactly. Water bottle is like the DOM. You know, it has functionality. It has a lid. I can drop this. I can do some stuff with it. It has some extra functionality to it. But really, it's just a water cup. It's just a cup of water, right? That's it. The cup is like the HTML. Very simple, very analogous. Looks different. Comes in different shapes. Oh, that's cold. It feels nice. I wasn't expecting that to be cold. But really, since this is still just a cup of water, but it's also the water bottle. The same way how HTML is very simple and straightforward, but it's also the DOM. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Can you give us another example of a DOM for JavaScript?
There is no.
Oh, there's no DOM?
No.
So it's HTML.
Yeah.
So they just didn't want to call it HTML.
It just works on the HTML.
Okay.
I could say DOM is HTML.
Is HTML DOM?
Yes. They mean the same. It's pretty much
Square is a rectangle, but a rectangle
Where-
is not a square.
where you are today. Where you are today, yes.
Okay.
Where you'll be in 6 months, probably not. Yeah, because there's a lot more going on there, but for today and the next 2 weeks, yeah, it's the exact same thing.
No, is C# the DOM to .NET?
Nope.
Or no? Just
So that's all fine and dandy, which is what comes with the DOM. What comes with HTML in the browser is something called events. Events are this idea that, hey, something happened, now I want to do something. So events are what's fired whenever the browser or user does something inside the browser. What this allows us to do is that the browser exposes these events. And we can say, hey, run our JavaScript on these events. So like when a user clicks this button, increment my counter. When my user hovers over this menu item, add the CSS classes. When the browser comes online, or when the browser loses internet connection, display a message saying that we're offline. When the browser page loads, when the DOM is loaded, run this code. So it's a lot of like the browser's waiting for something, fires up that event, and then the JavaScript for that event fires off.
So you're gonna have a bunch of DOMs, which is a bunch of
One DOM.
HTML, H code. Well, if you have
One
multiple.
DOM.
So you don't have like you have multiple pages though.
Each page is its own DOM,
Right. That's
but
what
you
I'm
only
saying.
see one page at a time.
Right. So I'm saying if you had a bunch of different pages.
Yep.
Or DOMs, right, and then your website goes offline. And the JavaScript is gonna go and change the page to the new page that says your internet connection is busted.
Yes, you can do stuff like that.
I want to give it one reason why I'm here. Working on a tool, was working with a very experienced developer. We got a requirement to change all of the lettering on the page of the name of the company.
Mhm.
Well, the tool was a tool that was purchased, and they came to me and said, we need to make a change. I'm like, I don't know how to make this change. I have no idea. Went to one of our developers. He goes, oh, it's JavaScript. We can do it right now. And he wrote this JavaScript that it loads on page load,
Yep.
And it automatically it looks for the elements and say in these elements change this name, or it looked for the name specifically.
Yep.
Change the name. Boom. I mean, literally, he did it in 15
Yeah.
minutes.
Yeah.
Reloaded the page and it was
Yep.
done.
But that's exactly what it is. There's a page load event. And on page load event, we said, here's my set of instructions, here's my algorithm to change the words, the letters. Whenever the page is loaded, run this out.
Okay, so in CSS there is a pseudo element hover,
Yeah.
where I can make some things happen when I hover over them with the mouse. Is this just more things I can do
Yep.
at that point, rather than just like change the font, change the color?
Mm-hmm. Yes, that's the same kind of idea though. It's your CSS is waiting for it to be hovered on.
Right.
Once that hover event is triggered, it's going to change the CSS.
But I would use JavaScript instead of CSS because I can do more?
Yes.
Okay.
Like, oh, you hovered over this thing for 10 seconds. I'm going to track it.
Cool.
Yeah.
Okay.
When you're on those like Wall Street Journal or New York Times sites and it has the stupid like sign up for this thing,
Mhm.
that's a JavaScript again?
At that point, it's listening for the scroll event
Mm.
and going, hey, whenever you've scrolled so far down the page,
Mhm.
pop up this thing going, hey, subscribe to my mail list.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's going, is page position greater than 800 or something like that?
Mm-hmm.
If it is, then change the CSS on this div to be shown instead of hidden.
Can it be timed too, like how long someone's on the page?
Can I ask you a question? Like, so is Alexa JavaScript or is it just
Alexa?
like the things?
Yeah, like the smart speakers.
Yeah, since it's all internet based,
It can be JavaScript.
why is it backend?
It's more backend.
Because it's like, yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff going on there. It's like a web page,
Okay.
except your interaction is voice and not with a click.
Yeah.
And just like a web page, most of the functionality is actually on a backend server somewhere.
Okay.
Probably that's to a more extreme extent because Alexa is only like this big and doesn't have a lot of processing power. But events. So events run our blocks of JavaScript code. We need some way to organize our code into blocks. This is where functions come into play. So functions, all functions are, they're just building blocks of code. They're saying, hey, here's 5 lines of code that I want to run together. They can be as big or as small as we want. And it's just something that we can say, hey, whenever this button's clicked, run this function. So this is how we define functions in JavaScript. There's 2 different ways of doing it. we can either use a function expression, like we're doing on top, or we can create a function like we're doing on the bottom. We prefer the way on top. That's a more modern approach for it. A lot of reasons why, which we'll probably get into next week. But for today, a top one's fine enough.
And also, all browsers, current browsers support the top.
So now if I wanted to, I can call say hello someplace else, and it would still work.
Why is there the like equal sign arrow part in the top one and on the bottom?
So this is just different ways to create a function.
Okay.
This one's saying, hey, creates a new variable called say hello.
Right.
And it equals, in that parentheses arrow, that's assigned for an expression or a function. Saying here, whenever I run say hello, it's defined as this.
That's the arrow function.
So let's throw this in our REPL real fast to see what that's all about.
Wait, so we're not using functions today?
We are, but we're using these kind. I'm trying my mouse.
Top one?
Yeah, I'm using my top one, not the bottom.
Okay.
So I come over here. Let's clear that out. Node. So const say hello equals console.log hello world.
That's printing it out.
Yeah. Console.log is just printing out that string to the console.
Okay.
So I've defined say hello. And because JavaScript is considered a more functional style languages, and what that means is that functions are just treated as data. So I can put a function inside of a variable. So if I print out say hello, I actually get a function it's saying, hey, say hello is a function. It's something that's called say hello. If I wanted to run it, add parentheses to it. And then I'll actually go, hey, run that code, run console.log, print it out, and then stop. So now,
How come the parentheses are empty and you don't call it X or N or something?
because I'm not passing it any parameters.
Oh, okay.
Why is it undefined? After it gave you the answer to your question.
Because I'm not returning anything. I'm just, so remember how we did before, const x equals 5 or equals 6?
Sure.
It's not returning anything, it's just doing it. So it's executing the function.
And then telling you it executed.
Yep.
Okay.
That's it. That's the, hey, nothing broken, so we're good
Okay.
kind of thing.
All right.
Cool, there's a hand up here.
Yeah, so the function isn't actually, I guess I'm having a hard time wording this, but isn't there a way to make it so that the function calls back without using the parentheses, like as you define it?
Yeah, that's called a, what's it called? It's like a self-evaluating function.
Oh, what?
Or something like that. I forget, it's like an IF something or other like that. There is a way to do that, but don't worry about it.
Okay. Right.
Yeah. Because you're saying I want to define a function and run it all in the same line. And there are pros to that, and that's a good practice, but not today.
Right.
So yeah, we're just saying, hey, package this up a nice little package for me to run it as many times as I want later. Dawn, you got a question?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, parentheses.
Yes. Parentheses.
Okay, so hello world.
Yep.
Is parentheses.
Yep. So let's
And
break this down.
parentheses is, wait, say hello is parentheses. And parentheses is
A function.
hello world.
Say hello equals parentheses and an arrow. That parentheses in the arrow says that this is whatever's next is going to be a function. So
It's, they don't show inside.
we'll expand on those later. But for right now, it's just saying, hey, this is a function. This is a block of code.
And the variables say hello.
Yep.
I don't understand the, okay. Or the parentheses.
Whenever we see it in 10 minutes in a more better formatted way, it'll make a bit more sense.
Actually, a really quick question. So, if we're on a job site and let's just say there's a bunch of cons
Mhm.
and then there's a bunch of functions, would they crash it?
Nope.
It's the same thing.
It's the same thing. Yeah. You can use them interchangeably, and there's reasons to use both and the other, but yeah, it's fine. You can use them both. So now we can take these building blocks and attach them to events that the browser is firing. So let's see this in action real fast. So I'm going to come here. Whew. We are in.
How did you do that?
How did I do what?
You just hit the down arrow.
Tab.
Tab.
Yeah, tab auto completion. So if I do that again, so I can type L and get everything that starts with an L.
Mm-hmm.
Then
You just tab over.
yeah,
So you just tab 4 times.
so make dir week 2. CD week 2. So I'm going to create a new app, a new website. No longer alpha stack. We're now in beta stack. Take,
Oh.
I know, congratulations. It's the first step. So I'm going to create this. So the only difference between alpha and beta stack is that the beta stack has a JavaScript file. And that's it. And it's all hooked up for you, so you just have to start writing JavaScript. There's not much different.
Sorry, so it'll have, on the HTML part of the page, it'll have to link over to that JavaScript, like
Yeah.
with CSS.
So if you create it with the alpha stack by accident, it's okay. It's easy to add the stuff there, but this just does it for you. How are we feeling right now?
Good.
Sure.
Sure?
I mean, why do you keep saying it like that?
I don't know. How do you really feel?
Okay, so I have a question, but I don't think it's headed towards the let's watch it fire when we hover over things. I think it's.
Yeah.
Okay, so if we had put an X in that first set of parentheses, when we were like, could we make it say like hello world James? If we made like James.
Yep.
Let X equal James, we could say make it say hello world X.
Yep. You are actually stumbling on this idea of what's called a parameter.
Yes.
So a parameter, it allows us to pass a value into a function. So we could do const, say greeting equals name, console.log hello plus name. All right.
Cool.
So now I can go, hey, say greeting, James. Hello, James.
That makes more sense. Okay.
Yes, yes. For events, you don't have to know about parameters, but you can.
Oh, so there's no
Because-
argument?
Arguments and parameters are pretty much the
The
same.
input's the parameter, right?
What?
The input's the parameter? Like what data is,
Mhm.
basically.
Yeah, it's whatever value that the function's taking as the
It's
parameter.
like f of x, and you're just putting x's name, and then so that therefore it runs that value through the function.
Yep.
It's like a math problem.
It's
You have like f of x
very
equals-
much so rooted in math,
Yeah.
but you don't have to be good at math to be good at programming. I know, right?
I'm just good at math, so
It's-
it helps to understand.
Math is
it, yeah.
fun, but it's a different kind of math.
Right.
Yeah, it's category theory, which is so much fun. Anyways, say greeting, hello, 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 blah, blah, blah. Okay, so that clears up a couple.
Yeah, that helps a lot.
That does help.
Good. So where's. No. Stop. So in our beta stack, as I said, not too much. There's an extra main.js file, and that's it. So let's take a look at the index HTML. Looks a lot like what we have last week, right? We have a link to a CSS sheet, we have a body, we have everything like that.
You have a script in the body.
We also have the script tag. Script tag goes at the end of the body. Okay, so everything else, script tag's last. And that's it. That's the only difference. What?
It goes at the end of the line.
It does. Yes, Amanda?
If it reads from top to bottom, why is the script tag at the top?
That's a really good question. So that revolves around this idea of perceived loading time. All right.
Okay.
So let's think about how browsers load stuff. Browsers load stuff top to bottom. So we need to think as developers, what's more important for the user to see? So it's going to hit the head and go, okay, here's a whole bunch of stuff I have to load. Here's my CSS files. Here's my fav icons. Here's my CSS stuff. Here's my JavaScript. It's going to load all of that before the user sees anything on the page. So we as developers have found that, well, we could put stuff in the head, and the only stuff that we should put in the head is links that's related to how the page looks. So what's going to happen is that it's going to load the CSS. It's going to load your content. Then when the CSS is done loading, it's going to change. It's going to actually format stuff. And then it's going to load the JavaScript. It's very minuscule changes. And by all means, I could put that script tag anywhere on my page and it would still work. But for the best perceived performance, you put it at the very bottom. Also, if you have stuff in a JavaScript that interacts with the page whenever it's loaded, if it's loaded before the page is loaded, the page doesn't exist. So it can't work on it.
It loads before the page is loaded, it doesn't exist.
Yes.
Okay, all right, that makes sense.
Mhm.
Say that again? If what?
If the JavaScript works on the page
There's nothing there.
and the page hasn't loaded yet, there's nothing there for the load.
Cool, got it.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
So that's why it's at the bottom. Because I know initially it's like, oh, it should go in the head because it's metadata about the page, right? It's not part of the content. The user never sees my JavaScript file. But
But
it
it's
needs
working on the file, so it needs to be good after or at
Yep.
the end. So it's
So in the body, last thing in the body.
very last thing in the body.
Plus, that's easier to find, easier to read.
Yeah, it's kind of we know it's there. That's where it should be.
so don't go below that and start adding all your HTML loadings.
Correct. You want to add it above it. So let's head over to our main JS and see what's here. So there's not much going on here, and I'm going to simplify this even more. So here's our first function with our first event. And it's doing stuff. So let's break this down. The first thing I'm doing is I'm defining a new function called main. It equals a function, it equals a block of code. Inside that block of code, it's interacting with the DOM. It's going, hey, document. Document is the JavaScript word for the DOM. Hey, DOM, hey, document. Find me a tag that matches this selector. That selector should feel kind of familiar to you because it's just a CSS selector.
So that's saying H1 header, and then it's saying of class hello world all in one.
Yep. It's saying find me an H1 tag that has the class of hello world. Find it for me and adjust its text content, so whatever text is inside of it, and have it equal to hello world. So it's saying, here's my function. It's not saying run it yet. It's saying I've defined this function, and that's it.
Is text content a keyword, or how would you
It's
define
a property.
a property, such a JavaScript property?
It's a property of an object
Okay.
that is inside the DOM.
Oh, okay. So it's user defined.
No, defined by the browser.
Okay. Sorry, this is going to be a little long. So if I have in my HTML, in the H1, in where it says hello world, if I have something with like, Borscht is made of beets, and the page loads, it will say that up until the JavaScript hits, and then it will load hello world in.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yes. And it'll do that because on the next line, we're adding an event listener.
Because if not, it wouldn't do it.
Right.
Okay.
DOM content load.
Yes. Defining a function and running a function are two
Are
different
different.
things. We're going, hey, create this for me, do this for me. But don't do it yet. I'm going to tell you when to do it later. And when we're telling you to do it later is right here. We're going, hey, document. We want to add an event listener to you. Listen for the event that's called DOM content load. So once your HTML page is loaded and ready to go, then run the function called main.
Okay.
Kind of like wait till it comes out of the oven and then put the basil on
Exactly.
I like it.
That's true. It's,
That was quick.
Okay.
So, yeah. So how are we feeling so far? So let's look at the HTML again.
Massive question.
So right now our H1 is blank. And that's it. I'm actually going to put some content here. What
Borscht is made of beets.
borscht?
B-O-R-S-T-C-H. Yeah, it's like Russian soup.
I was wondering what in the world you said.
I just, it was, I don't know.
That's amazing.
There we go. So this says borscht is made of beets, which sounds delicious. Because
Let's
I like
go ahead
that
and
sound.
Lawrence Gibson.
Yeah, and I save it. Now if I actually go to the localhost 3000, it's going to say hello world.
Right.
Because it's going, hey, added something to the event. This event fired, I'm going to run that function. If I didn't have that, my IDE is actually going to give me a warning, main is assigned but never used.
Cool.
And if I come over here, it's going to tell me what the default text is.
So why is it more of like a fail-safe for the HTML? Like, why would you want to have like two different copies of hello?
Yeah, why would I do that?
Yeah.
You want to hover it. And then have it
It's-
so
The
change
event
when
is,
hover.
right?
It comes down to what you're trying to do.
Yeah.
This is almost like a contrived example just to make sure that everything's hooked up and working.
Oh, okay.
But like, if this is going to be static content, like if it's always going to say welcome to my site, it should be in HTML. But if it's going to say
so-
welcome to my site, Alan, then we need some JavaScript there.
Oh, okay. So okay, I get it now.
Yep.
So like a screen reader at this point is still just going to read the content. So the
Yes,
screen reader isn't going to have hello world drop.
correct.
Okay.
Yeah, a simplistic web crawler screen scraper kind of thing isn't going to see hello world. It's going to see this because we haven't run it. Search engines and screen crawlers are actually to the point where they're running the JavaScript. Yeah, so they're actually seeing like what it is, because as we'll see in 3 weeks when we get to React, our entire HTML is like one empty div and that's it. And the rest is dynamically made for us. So like they kind of had to adapt to like, we have these fully featured websites that are just coming off as like one element HTML, like what's going on here.
Yeah, so that's what when I was reading that, and they would have like an underscore wrapped in
Mhm.
div, and I was like, what the hell is that?
Yeah.
And that's what they're doing. They're basically saying, oh well,
Mm-hmm.
that's actually just a placeholder for me to
Yep.
JavaScript all my stuff in there.
Yes, because really, and browsers are much better at it now. If there's an empty element, there's no guarantee it'll end up on the page.
If you went back over to localhost 3000 and then went to inspect, where does the JavaScript show up?
That's a really good question, and I like your thinking. Because it's like, hey, if I'm going to be doing JavaScript, I should be able to see it run on the client side, right?
Well, didn't they do away with that because of all the hacking and stuff? Or?
No. Oh no, that's
No,
still
it's
that's
still
still
on there?
really there.
Okay.
Yeah. Sources,
Still really
main.js.
there? Okay.
This shows our code. We can do a lot of cool stuff here, like set breakpoints and stuff like that, which we'll see later on today. But yeah, we can see everything inside of sources. And even as a bonus, console, bless you. Console, did we talk about this last week? Did you remember seeing this? Bless you again. This is actually a REPL for the JavaScript inside of our browser. So you know how we had a REPL over here in Node? Now this is a REPL for JavaScript in the browser. So I can actually type JavaScript here. Let x equals -13.
Isn't this actually the console.log itself, right there.
Yeah, this is technically the console. So if we had a console.log,
Why is my console always open in a separate window?
you probably have a setting toggled. We can look at it. So like if we have a console.log, that's going to show up there.
Whoa.
This is really useful for debugging and figuring out what's going on. So we're going to put this tool in our back pocket and frequently use this over the next couple weeks.
So what happens if you console.log the main function? Is it-
Let's do it out here just to see it. Console.log main without running it.
Oh, well, that doesn't matter, I guess, right now.
So we just console.log out main without running it. And we got that, hey, here's my building block. If I wanted to actually console.log main, what this is going to do, this is going to say, okay, console, we're logging something. Oh, we're logging a function that's getting run. Let me go run that function. Now let me give you the thing that that function returned, and you can print that out. As you saw earlier, this function returns nothing, right? It returns undefined. So this will actually print out undefined. And that would be this one right here. Because it happened on line 7.
Yeah, that's cool. It gives you the lines.
Yep. And it'll actually take you there inside of this.
Oh wow.
Yep.
There it is.
Still feeling good?
Good.
Awesome. I like it. So I drew up a quick wireframe on the board over there. I want to have a page that says you've clicked this button X amount of times. And every time I click the button, it increments the counter by 1. So we're going to be displaying some data. We have some dynamic data. We have some events going on here, as well as some static HTML. All right? So let's code this up real fast.
Just real easy, real fast.
Yeah, this
No
is like
problem. This is like baby
easy
steps.
stuff, right?
Yeah, this is baby steps.
Is this still fun?
Oh, this is the funnest part.
this is the it's a thing part. You have clicked 8 times. Button 8 times. Woo! I did it 8 times.
Yeah, but isn't 8 going to be a variable?
8 right now is just content.
Okay.
We know, as people like thinking, we know that 8's going to change, right? When we click that button, it's going to start off at 0. It'll go 1, 2, 5, 7, 8, all the way up.
Right.
But we don't have that functionality yet. So a good popular strategy is to create the static content first, and then go back and make it dynamic later.
So like go back.
So you don't forget what it is, like if you named it X or something. You'll be like,
Man,
oh,
it just doesn't matter what it is.
Yeah, it doesn't.
It's like I'm gonna have a bucket somewhere that's gonna do stuff. It doesn't matter. At the end of the day, I need this on the page.
Right.
And this always kind of helps recenter you to kind of refocus to like I need to do this.
That's what happens with CSS with me. I get sucked into CSS. I'm like, when formatting for HTML is not even done yet.
Yeah. Yep. So it always comes down to whatever the static content is. So we got that. We'll worry about CSS later because we're in JavaScript land now. Yeah. I got to give it something. I'm sorry. CSS main font size 3 rems text align. Yeah, yeah.
When does it end?
There we go. I like that. And let's wrap you in a section.
I think in this section was misspelled.
Ah, it was. Bloop. I'll take that. Works for me. Okay, so we have a button that says click me right here. So now I want to, whenever I click that button, I want to increment a counter by 1 somewhere. There's a lot of stuff going on there. Where do we start? Any thoughts?
Set a variable for 8.
So we need a variable somewhere, we're going to need a variable somewhere.
Can we start with making the button connect to a thing?
That's probably where we will land on a button somewhere. But it's always about the baby steps.
So
We
if you
can't do anything.
declare 0 as the starting point.
Yeah. We probably will in like 10 minutes. or 5 minutes, 3 minutes. But like the very first thing we should do is can we make this button work? Can we have that first baby step of our entire problem? Because without that first baby step, nothing else matters. Our variable that we're going to set to 0 is just going to sit there. So let's make that thing happen. So I'm going to create a new function. Const, I'll call it button click event. So I'm creating a function. It takes no parameters, and it currently doesn't have anything inside the body. A good thing to do, console.log, button was clicked.
So that'll show.
Where?
Yes, where
In the
will that show
console.
up?
In the console.
In the
console. Where we were.
But
So-
not on the HTML, on the actual
Correct.
client side facing
No, we
page
don't want
over
it.
here in JavaScript.
Correct. Yeah, the user will never see that unless they open up the console, which is really fun to do. Keep your console open as you like browse the internet. Just do it sometime. It's a lot of fun.
Lots of stuff.
Yes. So now, if I come over here to my console, nope. Get rid of that real fast. If I click me, not working. So we created the event.
So we didn't put
But you
it in
didn't
the
put
Well, we
event.
need to put the script on the HTML page.
We need to actually hook it up to something inside the HTML. We need to go, hey, I got my stuff that I want to do, but I didn't tell you when to do it. It's like I gave you the recipe, but didn't tell you when I'm coming over for dinner. You know.
And then this one.
Yep. So document dot query selector. We want to find the button on the page. We want to add event listener, event click. And whenever I click it, I want to run the button click event. So Dawn and then Amanda.
So click, where did you come up with that? Did you just name it click just now, or you're pulling that?
Nope, it's a browser defined event.
Oh, okay.
MDN events. Yeah, MDN has a list of all the events. So like if I wanted to listen to what's a after print event, that after a user prints my page, I go, thank you for wasting trees, for printing my webpage. I can display a message that for listening for the after print event. So, yeah. This will be included in the homework tonight. Feel free to read these. Again, don't memorize these. But it's gonna be like, this is nice to know.
Because the text editor has like recommended ones, right?
Yeah. Yeah. It's like, here's all of the actual events
Yeah.
that we can do.
Okay.
So it's like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we're just saying, hey, document. Oh, sorry, Amanda, you have a question?
You're good. Is this as much as it needs to be connected to our HTML?
Yep.
Like at this point, if we went back over to localhost 3000 and we clicked, we would get the
Mhm.
button was clicked over to JavaScript.
Yep. And just to prove that,
That's badass.
yeah, right? I like it. But it's saying, hey, document, go find me something that matches the selector of button, so in this case, all button tags. Add an event listener, add it to the click event, and whenever that thing fires a click event, run this code.
Can you say that one more time?
So hey document, find me everything that matches, or find me the first thing that matches the selector button. So find me the first button on the page. Hey, take that button, add an event listener to it. We're going to be listening for the click event. And whenever the click event is fired, run this code.
That query selector, it's only the first button on the page, it's not every.
Correct.
What if you wanted another,
I think
you just do like the third button?
Then you have to query for that button.
Like, and you put like a class event
Yep.
on it or something?
Yep.
So-
Usually I wouldn't do I would do like classes or IDs here. But since our HTML is so simple, you can do a button page.
So, how does it know to count the events?
So
We
function
haven't done
defined
it.
above.
Okay.
What you
So
saw.
you didn't tell it to count.
Yeah, we haven't defined our variables yet. We're not counting anything. We're just saying, hey, when this button is clicked, print this statement.
But on the console.
Yeah,
That's
it's
built-in
you.
console functionality there.
So you didn't have to tell it to do that.
No,
Which
it's saying, hey, this button was click. That message was displayed 23 times. Instead of listing out 23 times,
okay.
it's saying, hey, this thing was displayed 23 times.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
So it's kind of doing what we want, but not really.
Can you go back to the code?
Yeah, sure.
After the event, it's button click event. What is that? Is that the property?
So
It's
it's
a function
constant
from line
button
6.
click event
From
equals,
Okay.
that's the function that we define.
If we had bunches of JavaScript, is the bottom of that JavaScript page just all document dot?
Pretty much, yeah. A pattern, what you'll see and how I like to structure my vanilla JavaScript pages is at the very, very top, that's all my data. Next I have my actual logic as functions. Then I have my event functions, and then I have my document.event listeners. So that's kind of how I structure my HTML pages to kind of keep them organized.
Data logic event and then what?
We'll get to it. It's a logic, it's a data logic, event functions, and then event listeners.
So the query selector
Yes.
is telling you to go to your HTML page.
Yep.
Button.
Yes.
And the add event listener is telling it to count clicks. No.
Not yet. This add event listener is saying,
Pay attention to me,
Yep.
kind of?
Yep.
Okay.
it's saying, hey button, I'm now paying attention to you whenever you say click.
Okay.
And whenever you say click, I'm gonna do this.
Okay.
We haven't defined what this is yet. We haven't, like, nothing's here yet. We haven't done the actual magic yet.
But we're waiting for the magic.
Yes. But in order for us to do the magic, we need to have this instance
Set it
first.
up first.
Yes.
So basically right now, really all we have is that we know that our Java is actually listening to the page when we click that button.
Yes.
That's it.
We know our JavaScript.
Our JavaScript, sorry.
Yes. Yes. Java is to JavaScript as car is to carpet.
Right.
Yeah. that's the similarity. So here we are. Let's start doing our magic now. As B and Dante pointed out, we need a variable to store our stuff, right? We need to store the amount of times clicked. So I'm going to create a variable. Since it's going to be changing, yes, we'll call it counter, count of times clicked. We'll set it equal to 0. Variable names should be meaningful. I could just do A, but I don't know what A is. I could also do count. For the scope of this page, that's probably be okay. But I like meaningful variable names. I know variable names are cheap, so I'm going to make them as big as I want. Probably bigger than a word, less than a tweet. You'll know if it's too long. Count of times clicked.
That's something you just made up.
Yep. I pulled that out of thin air. I said, I'm going to be storing a value here. What am I going to be storing? I'm going to store the count of times clicked. And I'm going to set it to 0, yes.
You let it be let instead of constant because it's going to be constantly changing. Like
Yeah,
regular?
because we're going to go in and change the value later, so it has to be let.
Does that have to go up top? Is the like where it's at? Will that affect it? Because you put let count times clicked at the very top.
Mhm.
Does it have to be up there?
So remember how we said code is read it in order, from top to bottom, left to right. So we're saying, hey, we're defining this first. If I would move this, down to here, and I tried to run button
Oh,
click
it's
event
doing
before
all of
it's
that.
doing thing, yeah.
Gotcha.
This introduces what's called a possible race condition, because now this block of code is now dependent on this being read. Odds are 99.9% of the time it'll work, just because of how fast a computer is.
Okay.
But that's not guaranteed. I want it guaranteed, like, hey, you know what? This is always going to be defined.
Because it's gonna have to get to the bottom before it hits that.
Yep.
How did you move it like
Yeah,
that?
how'd you move that?
Alt up and down.
Okay.
If I hold Alt, I go up and down.
Whenever
I've
you're
been cut-
just
I've been cut
on
and
that
pasted.
line, hit all.
Yeah, if I'm alting up and down. If I have a highlighted of code, I move the highlighted code as well.
Oh my goodness, that is awesome.
Yeah, Amanda and then Phil.
Okay, so for each line of code we write, we're doing one thing, so that's why we're defining let counter times click right now, and then we'll do the increment next time.
Exactly.
As far as good practice of camel casing, is that the way you do it, just everything else is capitalized?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay.
The first level is lowercase, and then everything else.
Everything else.
So like lowercase c count of times clicked, main button click event.
I always thought it was like every other.
No, it's every.
Okay.
And we don't need semicolons.
Right. And our editor actually removed them
Yeah, it was.
because we turned that setting on like day one. Yeah, I know. Sidebar, it fixes like 6 bugs.
Oh, really?
So yeah, so like there's some weird things with like return statements they have to be aware of now. But like, if you're aware of those things and like you have editors that fix those things for you, like it doesn't matter. But
Will VSC catch it or no?
what?
Will the Visual Studio
Yeah,
Code
like-
catch those 6 bugs?
Yeah, that's what,
Oh.
like it's like we have tools to help prevent those kind of things. But like once in a blue moon, I'll run into like a semicolon would fix this kind of thing. Anyways, here we are, const main button click. We have a variable now. The very next thing we need to do is, you know what? I want to display that variable on the page. I want to say, hey, when my page is loaded, update this to be 0. Update this to be the current value of whatever it is. So I'm going to go, hey, we conveniently have a function that does that already. So, hey, I'm going to select something here, and I'm going to set its text content equal to count of times clicked.
Perfect.
Yeah, right? I like that. Amanda?
Okay, count of. So, if we had that be a string instead of a number, that would be okay even though it's text?
Yep. It doesn't care what it is. It's going to do its best to convert it to a string because text content is a string. That count of times click can be any type. It'll do it for us. That's the power of a dynamic language.
And so now we set a variable for that, for the number that's printed out in that sentence. 8 for 8. 8 becomes
Yes.
now a variable.
So now we need to actually put some sort of selector here. Something we need to be able to target that somehow. So we need to use an inline element. It doesn't affect styling.
Span,
Yeah, why don't we use a span? And let's give it a class of times clicked.
yeah.
Dot
So
span.
span dot,
Yep.
whatever you wanna name it?
Yep, tag dot
That
classes.
is cool.
You do that on purpose.
Yeah.
What?
Watch my
To, like,
fancy
wow
moves
us.
that I got
I do, because if I did that last week, your head would have exploded. And now you're like, I appreciate that.
That means
Spell
you
it.
see
Mhm. Yep. So now, in my JavaScript, my selector, because it's a class, dot, and times clicked.
And you didn't have to put the number because we were then.
Yep.
We will define the number as 0.
Yep. Once the content is loaded, once the page is there, go in and update it to whatever the current value is, which when the page is loaded is going to be 0.
So you didn't have to declare a new variable because you're just using a class to target the,
How does the number change?
How does the number change?
Yeah.
It's in our button click event that we haven't gotten to yet.
Okay.
Baby steps.
We told it to equal 0 for right now, right?
That's
Yes.
Okay.
So it doesn't change.
And really, if you wanted to put some sort of like default value there or something like that, you could. But just as we saw with borscht contains beets, it's going to be overwritten almost immediately. So like, I'll put just a hyphen there. Be like, you know what? There's no number here yet. You haven't clicked anything yet, but it loads so fast you don't even see it.
oh, that's classic. That's like how they were, I've seen a lot of code like that.
Mm-hmm.
I was so confused as to how, what was going on.
Mm-hmm. So now that we have our button clicking and doing things, we have a bucket for the count of when things are happening. Now we want to go, hey, whenever we click the button, we need to actually increment the counter. So we saw earlier how we increment stuff. Yep, count of times clicked plus equals 1. We could do plus plus as well. We could do plus plus. We could do equals. We could do any one of the flavors we saw earlier. I like this flavor the best, personally. That's just me. But now we've done it. And if we save it, and I click it, it's still not updating.
We do one more step.
We do. If we go, if we see count of times clicked, it is 7. It does equal 7 because I clicked it 7 times. So we are actually doing it. We just need that one last extra step of updating the HTML. It's, oh, something happened. I do some logic. Now I'm going to update the HTML.
So message.
Message?
Kind of like message of, you have to like display the message of.
Yeah.
Need to listen to the event.
Print screen.
Maybe we just add the text content. We just go, hey document, go find me, query selector, times clicked, set its text content equal to the new value of count of times clicked. Because we can do multiple things on one single event.
Okay. Just click the button.
Yeah. So I'm just going, hey, when this button is clicked, now do 3 things for me. Constant.log a message, increment the variable by 1, and then update the HTML to reflect this new value.
Do we even need the console?
We don't. We don't need it. We could get rid of that.
Okay. That makes sense.
It does make sense?
Yeah.
I'm lost as to why we need both lines 4 and line 10.
4 and 10?
Yeah, because they're the same, right?
They are the same. And yes, that's good that it's like, why are we duplicating our lines of code?
Right.
Right?
Okay, can we take out the top one?
We can't take out the top one because we're saying at 2 different times do this. So let's say we're making a peanut butter and jelly sandwich and a BLT,
Right.
right? We're still taking a knife out of a drawer, sticking the knife in a jar, and spreading something on it, either mayonnaise or peanut butter.
Sure.
So even though we're doing those two different actions, we're still doing the same action of taking out a knife.
Just kind of in two different places.
Exactly.
Yes.
Okay.
That's kind
So that's the recipe.
Yeah, on the first one, we're saying, hey, the first time the page is loaded, set it to its initial value. Then the second time, we're saying, hey, whenever this event happens, do this. It's conveniently and coincidentally the exact same code.
Is it kind of weird?
It is actually structured as a
loop.
loop. Click it, yeah.
So what's the data, the logic in function? Oh, I know that.
Yep. So now we're going to take this idea, and because I think we're all kind of ready for it, we're going to take this idea one step further and go, we got duplicated code. That feels kind of weird, right? As it should. Us as developers, we want to try to write what's called dry code. Don't repeat yourself. So our code needs to be very dry. Our code's not very dry right now. It's not very dry because we're doing literally the same thing in two different places. So let's change that. Let's create a building block that does it once and then call that building block in multiple places. Building block we know is a function. So const, what are we doing? Updating the value of the content, right? So let's do update counter in HTML. And all this is doing is that. And that's it.
Okay.
So now we can call that on main, update counter in HTML. And also here as well.
So it's kind of like giving it a class, sort of, kind of, right?
It's putting it in its own bucket.
It's a variable, so a constant is a
it's
common
saying-
variable.
It's saying, hey, I'm going to be doing this thing a lot, over and over and over again. I'm just going to write the instructions once. So instead of me going, so if we had like 5 recipes, one for blueberry pie, one for strawberry pie, one for chocolate pie, one for key lime pie, the first step in all those is to make your pie crust, right?
So
So-
just pie crust.
Instead of just saying, here's how you make a pie crust 5 different times,
Yeah.
we can wrap that up and go, you know what, step 1, make your pie crust, follow the directions over on line 3.
So update counter in HTML, it's a function, right?
Yep.
So why do you need to have, does document.querySelector just always have to be in a function? Why couldn't you just say equals document?
So the reason why it's in a function is that I'm telling it to do it later.
Okay,
I'm not telling it to do it now. I'm just giving you instructions to execute later.
okay, to execute later, gotcha.
In the event that something's clicked.
I don't know when it's going to be run later. I mean, I do, but the function doesn't. It's okay. I exist. I know how to do things, and that's it.
So if we like made another button to like count something else,
Mhm.
you could still pull that same
Yeah.
variable you made.
Yep. So let's see if this works. Because I don't think we actually looked at it in action yet. It works. I like it. So now let's add a second button. Ooh, it's new. Let's add a second button that says add, what's someone else's favorite number?
7.
7. Add 7 to count. Class add 7. So now I'm going to make a second button that whenever we click it, we add 7 to our score instead of just 1.
Copy all that. Times 7? Okay, add 7.
So yeah, we're going to be pretty much redoing this, except we're going to change like one line and that's it.
Right.
So let's add another event listener. Document dot query selector.
Add 7.
Yep. Dot add event listener. Click. Add 7 to count. I didn't make this yet. And just like we created the button to click event before, we're going to create our add 7 counter, add 7 to count. Console.log, adding 7. Again, not needed, but good to see it just to make sure that things are working properly. Count of times clicked plus equals 7.
Update counter.
Is it? Update counter, yeah. Update counter in HTML.
How about the bit about the top?
Nope, because it's the exact same counter.
Oh, that's right.
So we're just saying, hey, instead of adding 1, we're adding 7 to it.
And
Do you need to
adds,
adjust it in CSS so that it's, oh,
Satisfying.
Isn't it? So it's the idea of event is listening. I'm going to do something whenever that event is fired. That do something is usually some logic or some functionality, and then update HTML. That kind of completes the entire loop. Sounds like day 1 of JavaScript.
Jumped right into it, didn't you?
Yeah. Yeah. And whenever we say fire hose, we mean fire hose. So for your homework tonight, is you're going to be making me a scoreboard for your favorite sports. I don't know what sport it is, but you're going to be making me a scoreboard. I'm giving you a wireframe of what I want it to look like. And I think I'm actually going to give you the HTML and CSS as well. So you only have to worry about the JavaScript. There's a couple of buttons, a couple of input boxes, stuff like that. It's a really fun assignment, I think at least. Review at 3, or with me at 3. We'll actually have it. We'll meet here at 3 o'clock, and it'll be a Q&A. Any sort of question about JavaScript, about the homework, we'll be here at 3 o'clock. It doesn't have to take the full hour, but just be back here at 3 o'clock. I'll assign homework out as soon as I get back to a laptop, and there we go.
Cool. Thank you.
Can I